The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah! Go Cowboys! This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, broadcasting live from Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star. Now, your hosts, Jess Navarez, Aisha Morrison, Kelsey Charles, and Jane Slater.
Welcome into episode 3 of Girls Talk, Boys Talk, and I want to say thank you to those of you who have been tweeting us and tuning in. We sure do appreciate it, and the show's only going to get better as we go on. I am your host, Jane Slater of the NFL Network, joined by Aisha Morrison and Jess Navarez, and we are working on getting Kelsey Charles looped in here. She is a busy woman and coming to us remotely, so as soon as we get her in, we will let you know. All right, ladies, I know that you are not here at the Star full-time the way that I am during the season for the NFL Network, but there was an interesting development, and I know you guys were listening to it the way that the fans were, and we have been talking about it. This news that Dak Prescott showed up on the injury report today with a ankle that had him limited in practice. So here's what happened for those of you that are just tuning in and aren't necessarily familiar with the news of the day. At practice, he was fairly limited, didn't get a lot of work in with the ones during the open portion available to the media. And so we went through our avail today. Dak Prescott comes out, and he conceded that, in fact, he would show up on the injury report, and here was his explanation.
No, honestly, I feel great. Something may come up in the report, but as you know, that's this league, and if you don't report a hangnail, you'll get suspended or they'll get fined. So, but no, I feel great. I still feel the best that I felt in a very, very long time. Not even comparable to where I was last year going into this game. So, honestly,
would you tell us if it was?
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily. I was limited today, but as I said, it is my ankle, but it is just being very, very precautious. Switch shoes today probably wasn't the best idea. So, there we go. So we're good to go. Promise that.
All right, so he explained to us that he changes out his cleats before a game every Sunday. Mm-hmm. Now, why he decided to change out his cleats on Thursday, a padded practice that's meaningful heading into the weekend because Friday's practice is fairly lighter,
right,
is news to me. Now, he says he typically wears 11s. Make sure I'm not getting that wrong. He typically wears 11s, and today he tried 1s. And so it was tight. Now, we pressed him on that. We said, did you roll your ankle? He said no. I then said that this was feeling like deja vu. Do y'all remember training camp last year when he hurt his shoulder? Here's what he had to say about that.
You did a press conference after the shoulder and told us it wasn't anything, and then we missed you for a couple of weeks.
I didn't know that, though. I didn't know. That was a baseball deal. I wasn't sure. Those are not even comparable. So, yeah. And obviously, when I found out about the shoulder, I had to, take back what I said. So this isn't even not even comparing.
Honest. All right, so to be in the room, ladies, and Kelsey Charles, we're welcoming her in on the phone now. She is live from Austin.
Hey, girl.
Hey, what's up, Kelsey? So I know you're paying attention to this too, Kelsey, remotely, but my biggest question for him, even though he was all smiles and he said he's going to be fine and he's not going to be limited, my biggest question was during that open portion, if it was kind of giving you some problems, the locker room is literally right there. And I know you ladies can sympathize with this. When I go to game day and I've got a 15-hour game and I decide to wear new heels, as I did for the preseason game against Seattle.
Oh, Jane.
It literally, there's nothing worse, and full disclosure, I have bunions. There is nothing worse than tight, ill-fitting shoes. It truly ruins your day. But I can't drive all the way home to Dallas and grab a new pair of shoes. His were literally right there, and maybe that's what he was doing. He kind of hobbled off and grabbed it. But, I mean, when you're putting limited on the report, you're limited to an extent. And maybe it was an abundance of caution because it is the same ankle that he has had surgically repaired not once but twice. That is of interest. And he said that tomorrow he'll be back out there, but it will be limited because it is obviously a lighter practice. Let me walk that back. He didn't say there's going to be limited. He said it'll be at practice, but he reminded us that it's a lighter practice tomorrow. But it will be very telling how taped up is the ankle. Did he aggravate it? It was just, it was interesting to me is all I'm saying. And Kelsey, I know you've been around this facility long enough that sometimes when they tell us injuries aren't a big deal, they sometimes turn into big deals.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I actually feel very interested in this subject because, full disclosure, I used to date an equipment manager for the team. So literally sometimes spent my weekends on eBay looking for new cleats for Sean Lee because that was his preference.
Yeah.
Same thing with like Rod Marinelli. We had his shoes on the patio. We're literally like spray painting them black so they can, stay within the rules of the NFL. So I feel very familiar with this situation, and I too am surprised that he changed his shoes. Also from a sponsorship perspective, because he is sponsored by Jumpman. I would be careful about what he's saying when he's talking about the shoes not being a good fit for him. Like you gotta kind of tread lightly when you're getting paid money by someone. So either way, I was pretty surprised to hear that. And I don't want to speculate too much, but what I do know is that they've had to transition equipment in game very often. If you guys go back to the London game, that field is totally different than any other field in the U.S. It's just they had to actually wear like old school spikes on their cleats. So they brought 2 pairs of shoes for every player, and they could switch them in and out. So I guess I'm just curious as to if that truly was the case, and it was something where he was like, listen, this is not vibing for me, that he didn't just go get another pair of shoes. And also, Jane, I totally feel you on the wearing new shoes on a game day. I'm actually here to work a game in Austin this weekend. This is so insane of me, but if you've been in the industry for a minute, you'll love this. I literally bring like foot numbing like cream.
Yes, lidocaine.
Yep.
Yes.
You spray your foot with
lidocaine.
lidocaine so that it doesn't hurt as much, they're not as swollen. But Kelsey, I'm glad that you've got a little insight into this. I'm not trying, and I said this on the podcast before, I'm not trying to create a storyline. I'm not trying to make something of something that may not be anything, right? But I'm just curious. I'm like, well, if it's not broke, why try to fix it? Like if you've been working with the 11s and they've been fine, and you're telling us you're going to go back to the same cleats that you were wearing in training camp, why on a Thursday did you decide to change it up? I thought that was interesting, but it's
not. I mean, because y'all were talking about heels. I'm a sneaker girl because my disability doesn't allow me to just wear heels like that. Yeah. And ones are one of those shoes that they're kind of flat at the bottom, they're tight at the top. Like that's not a shoe that I think you would be wearing to try to break in before a game day if that's what he was doing. I don't know. I mean, Kelsey brought up the sponsorship and stuff like that. It's kind of a weird situation with him. I think it happens all the time. I think players change shoes and stuff like this all the time.
And he saes he does it once a week before every game, but they're typically 11s.
I think it just
so I'm like, why the
eyebrow.
ones? Why the ones?
But
why the ones?
Exactly. That's what you're going to ask.
I've got questions.
I want you to ask him that just like that, Jane, but just in that tone. But it raises an eyebrow, especially right before opening game. And as, just watching what happened with that ankle, it really raises an eyebrow that it's the exact same ankle that had him out for that season, right? And so anytime you see any kind of player with an aggravated injury in an injury that took you out for the remainder of the season, I think as any kind of speculator, journalist, any kind of fan, you're kind of taking a step back to say, okay, that's a little weird. But
his description that it was like a hangnail. I'm like, come on,
it's probably more of a
maybe he has a
thing.
hangnail.
Maybe he said that because he has a hangnail.
No,
maybe
that's actually I don't want nothing going on with his feet.
Look, I think everybody should wrap their feet in bubble wrap. I mean, even CeeDee earlier in training camp. Somebody, please get these men some bubble wrap. Wrap your feet. I don't want you leaving. Just we gotta. It's weird. You raise an eyebrow.
But I guess I want to ask you guys too, because I feel like if you want to go like worst case scenario, right? Because Jane, you brought up a good point. Like there are often times where it kind of feels like hockey, where they're like upper body injury, like they're kind of nebulous in what they say. Like obviously they still play by the league rules and report what they need to report, but they don't want to give you all the details if they don't have to. So like let's say worst case scenario here, like maybe he does have a little bit of a re-aggravation. Do you guys feel like this would be a good time for them to start implementing like the Wednesday veteran stuff that they've done with the guys like veterans of past? Like is Dak at that point for us where there's an existing injury, or at least he's still kind of healing from one, and you're like, listen, Wednesday, you just take it easy, my guy?
Well, I hear what you're saying, and I actually like the question, Kelsey. I think you know as well as I do that getting a guy like Dak to even come off the field. I mean, all of you watched Hard Knocks last year, right?
Yeah.
He was getting him to just take a breather and come off the field is very hard for Dak, and that's what I love about him and Ezekiel Elliott for that matter. They've got a lot of gamers on this roster. It's just, again, I'm not trying to blow this up into something that it may not be. And as he said, there's no comparison to the shoulder. It's just, I've covered this team too long where they tell you it's, I mean, Tyron Smith, we've seen this before. Oh, it's nothing. And then it turns into something. So I hope for this locker room, I hope for this season that it really is just, hey, we're just being really, really cautious. And he kept emphasizing that and reemphasizing that, even though I had a few questions. That he's going to be fine on Sunday. So I trust that, and he does at least have a couple of days if he needs to ice it up and it was aggravated to make sure that he's ready to go on Sunday.
And you know what I think is going to be very telling, and usually you could see this kind of injury, if you even want to call it that. We don't really know yet, right? You would be able to say, okay, well, if it's really aggravated or he rolled his ankle or whatever the case is, you would see that in the play calling come Sunday when they're really relying on the run game. However, when the entire message of training camp off of the offense was we want the identity to be the run game, it's going to be hard to say how much it's really aggravated when they're trying to establish the run from the get-go, because that's really seems like it's been the game plan from the start, even before this happened. So I think it's one of those things that unfortunately take it day by day, and we're just going to have to see come Sunday. But I think everybody around here knows you're not going to count Dak out. And even if the man is hurting, you're not going to know, and he is going to push through as much as he can, and he's going to play through it. So again, that makes it hard to say what it really is, because he's that kind of player that he's not going to get off of the field, and you're not going to get him off of the field at any point, even if they're telling him. You're talking to the man that we all saw the footage of him after he had the ankle injury. He was still trying to get up, and he has that faith, fight, finish mentality all the time. And I think it's going to be interesting, but worth raising an eyebrow over. And Twitter was exploding.
I saw Dak Prescott. When you see Dak Prescott trending, when you open up Twitter,
man,
I think it raises alarms for everyone.
I will ask you guys, just because he is coming up as limited on the injury report now. Do you think that the Bucs are looking at this and are like, okay, what's going on with that? Is it maybe something that?
I think it's the same thing as when we're looking at Chris Godwin.
There you go.
Exactly.
Right. I think we know that Chris Godwin's going to likely play on Sunday. I think they're just being a little. I think teams try to get an edge as best as they can.
Right.
They did have to list him as limited because he was limited in practice.
Yes,
Dak. For me, there were some elements of what he said today and how practice went down that I was just like, that's interesting. That's the only reason I'm bringing it all up. And like I said, on Sunday, this could very well be a complete non-issue. And we've seen plenty of players like Ezekiel Elliott last year play through injuries, and I have no doubt that he will play through this one. But to your point, we talked about this yesterday. They want to run the ball. Ezekiel Elliott told us the playbook has more plays that feature him and Tony Pollard. But last year we went through their numbers against the Bucs, and they struggled on the ground. And Tampa Bay allowed 3.4 yards a rush when using a loaded box against Dallas last year. All other Dallas opponents combined to allow 4.4 yards for rush. So it just gives you an idea of how hard it was. And this team knows they would rather them throw the ball than run the ball. So I think they're going to make it. I think once again, not only are they going to target Ezekiel Elliott, I think there's going to be a heavy emphasis on Tony Pollard, because I don't think that the league respects this wide receiver room that much, and maybe they make the Bucs pay for that. I just don't think that there's a healthy enough level of respect, and even CeeDee Lamb sort of talked about that today, that he thinks the conversation about the wide receivers is going to change after a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Good.
And I love the fact that the wide receivers maybe aren't respected as much, because again, I very much subscribe to the theory of I want guys on my team that hate to lose more than they like to win. And I like that chip on their shoulder. I also would say, too, though, there's been a lot of talk in recent years about Kellen Moore being creative. And I think that this actually poses a really good challenge for him. This is a guy who's been interviewing for head coaching jobs across, the NFL, but also collegiate levels, too. So I really feel like this is an opportunity for him to put his money where his mouth is. What can you use Tony Pollard for? Because if we're looking at a situation and we know that Dak's going to have to act a lot quicker than he has been used to in years past, Tony Pollard and Zeke and Dalton Schultz and, Turpin all feel like good options to me. So I think there's a unique opportunity to actually be more creative from Kellen Moore's perspective, but it may not be because he wants to be. It may be more of a necessity.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, with Tampa's defense, one thing I think we know they do well is defend the run, and they defend the run well because of, you have Vita Vea there in the middle, and then I believe it's Hicks, if I'm not mistaken. But then at the same time, their linebackers can fly. Like sideline to sideline, these guys can fly. And you saw in the Bucs game last year, Dallas did have some success sometimes, taking the edge, taking the edge with Tony. But I'm curious to see how they set up this offense to succeed, getting those linebackers out of the way. I think our tight ends are going to have to get in there with that 12 personnel, get their noses dirty, not be afraid to chip and stuff like that. I think their secondary. I think that the Bucs secondary. I don't know if we're going to get to that, but I do think that the Bucs secondary has some guys that maybe you can exploit, and maybe these younger receivers can have some success. These tight ends can have some success, but the Bucs defensive line, the interior, is kind of where people are kind of trying to stray away from because Vita Vea. But I do think that if the tight ends come out, you can capture the edge a couple times and get some big plays with some bubble screens and stuff like that. A lot of quick game. Both of these offenses are going to be trying to get the ball out quickly, and it's funny because people talk about Tom Brady. They're like, how are you gonna get to him? Hey. Well, our guy's top 5 in that category, too, against the blitz. And Todd Bowles loves to blitz, so we'll see how they match up and how they fare. But their defensive line is okay. It's there, but their linebackers are what really fly to the ball and make that front 7 go, to me.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, well, when we come back, let's get into some of the if they're not able to establish the run.
Tracking.
Yeah, what wide receivers are you expecting a big game from? So
go.
we'll talk about that on the other side of the break. But first, Girls Talk, Boys Talk is presented by Jigsaw Dating, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. It's not complicated.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
What do you call a group of grown men and women with their faces painted silver and blue who get together every week to share a 3-hour-long ritual of jumping, singing, and toasting Miller Lite in 10-gallon hats while yelling, "How about them Cowboys?" You call it Miller Time in Dallas. Here's to the Cowboys. Here's to the original light beer. It's Miller Time. Celebrate responsibly. 2021 Miller Brewing Company, Fort Worth, Texas.
The Cowboys way, where 16 Hall of Famers and 5 championships shows us what success looks like. Where turkey is always the second best part of Thanksgiving Day. Where we are all defined by one single thing, the star. Where we as fans know it's our job to keep the tradition going. Bank of America is proud to be the official bank of the Dallas Cowboys and to support the quest of living life the Cowboys way. Copyright 2020, Bank of America Corporation.
Little Sweet! Did you get to work on time?
Yeah, but I just realized it's Sunday.
Little Sweet says head on home. Dr. Pepper's on its way. So sweet, unique. Baby, there's nothing better. I bet you've probably done something that deserves a Dr. Pepper. Did you invest your nest egg in an NFT?
Yeah, and I don't even know what that is.
It's a non-fungible token. Everyone's done something that deserves a Dr. Pepper.
Welcome back to Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. All right, well, ahead of the break, we talked about the Cowboys receiving core may be very important as we head into this game, knowing that what the Bucs love to do defensively is load the box. And so that essentially, no matter The fact that we've talked about they want to put Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard on the field at the same time. Last year we saw both of those guys fairly limited against the Bucs. So in terms of the wide receiver room, obviously you're missing Amari Cooper this season, so that's a big deal. And of course Michael Gallup, even though we saw him out there again getting work in the individual drills.
Yeah.
I think it would be premature, even though Mike McCarthy had a little fun with Ed Werder of ESPN, that we would talk about it if we saw him out there practicing again. I think it would be premature to see him playing in this one. So what do the Cowboys have in the wide receiver room? Well, here's the depth chart. You've got CeeDee Lamb, Noah Brown, Kevontae Turpin, Dennis Houston, and then you've got Simi Fioco. When we talk about guys outside of number 88, and of course I loved this conversation that Nui and our group had in Media Mash right before this. What wide receiver do you have the most confidence in outside of 88 heading into this game? Aisha, I'll go ahead and start with you.
Okay. So when you're talking about just experience, knowing this offense and everything, I think the obvious answer is Noah Brown. Like he's been here. He's dependable. Dak speaks very highly of him. I will say that the times he has gotten opportunities, you will mistake him for a CeeDee Lamb because he does have wheels. Like he has made the best of his opportunities. But if you want to win this game, if you want to shake some people up, Kevontae Turpin is that guy.
Yep.
I remember, I want to say it was about, right when Kevontae Turpin started getting picked up, they were talking about him being on the practice field for the first time and Trayvon Diggs, lining up across him and being like, what y'all doing? I'm not about to do, I don't want to line up against him. And we'd be crazy to think that other corners don't feel like that. They're going to respect his speed. And I think that the Cowboys can use that to their advantage, especially when you're talking about trying to get the ball out quick and trying to get him in space and get him moving. I do think that Simi Fioco is going to have something to say, though, too, because he definitely makes sure we say his name every game. And he has been on an uptick. I did hear some of the gentlemen talking about earlier. Do you think that Dennis Houston is going to be good to go for this game? What do you feel about the depth chart and who's going to be on the active roster, Jane?
It's interesting. We were wondering if Dennis Houston was actually going to dress for this one.
Tracking.
Because I was doing an ESPN radio show yesterday, and I shared the story on the last one. They said, well, what about Dennis Houston? Is he going to have a breakout game? I said, who? And that's no disrespect to him.
Tracking.
I do think Dalton Schultz is going to have a big game for you as a tight end. I think you could use Tony Pollard in your receiving game. And then when I'm talking about wide receivers outside of 88, I'm with you on the Kevontae Turpin thing. And the reason why I say that is I reached out to my TCU folks when he joined the Cowboys in training camp, and man, did they speak highly of him. Yeah. And they said, this kid is not just a specialist. Like, he is not a novelty guy. And then I was in the locker room, and I was asking Anthony Brown off to the side, hey, obviously you go up against offense every day. What wide receiver really stands out to you? And he lit up talking about Kevontae Turpin. He said, he is not just a return guy. Like, this guy is a wide receiver. And then it was CeeDee Lamb who said that when he was talking about Kevontae Turpin, having watched him in college, he said that he appreciated how well that he played in training camp because he said, quote, he made me look like a magician. That he just knew that this guy, I think what he meant was Nostradamus, but what he was saying there was, I told them how special this guy was, and people obviously realize it. Now, obviously we saw what he could do in the preseason, but I think that he is really going to stand out to folks. And they, obviously he said speed kills. Now, I think if you get enough tape on some of these guys, he reminds me so much of a little bit of the Tavon Austin hype. Remember the Tavon Austin hype? Where we were all in on Tavon. He was fast.
Late in his career.
Right. And I was a huge fan of Tavon. So we were high on Tavon earlier, and then, of course, that fell off. You get enough tape on Tavon. It didn't come to fruition. But I do feel like Kevontae has the upside and the potential to impress us. And quite frankly, they need him in this game. Yeah. As we talk about what we're facing defensively against the Bucs.
And, Jane, you kind of touched base on the specific name that I was going to point out who I really think is going to have a good game, and that's Tony Pollard. I think utilizing him in the wide receiver group is going to really do exactly what we've been saying what the theme is, especially with Kellen Moore's play calling. And Kelsey just touched base on this earlier of, hey, it's time to show us where show us where your money is, put your mouth where your money is, and use him. Utilize him as, running back, sure. But really, who are we going to lean on more for that? That's going to be Zeke. So I want to see Tony Pollard have more of a breakout game for this specific game than he did the last game, because I just pulled up the stats on last year's game. And again, we know those are two separate teams, two completely different sets of circumstances. He really didn't have a great game. Receiving, he only had 29 yards. As far as rushing, he only had 14 yards last season against the Bucs. So I want to see him have a great game as a wide receiver. Of course, I would love to see him interchanging within, the running back position as well. But I want to see him have a great game within the wide receiver group. I think he's one of those guys that Dak relies on as well. And he's one of Dak's go-tos. But I also think we tend to forget about him, especially when it came last year to being the Amari Cooper and the CeeDee Lamb. I think you kind of sleep on Tony Pollard as being the wide receiver that we know he can be. He can make some clutch catches when Dak needs it. He can go down the field, and he's likely going to catch that ball when you need him to, and he has those sticky fingers that you're in the mix of 2-man, 3-man coverage. You're going to get the ball when Tony Pollard is getting the ball. So I personally want to see Tony Pollard have this game I want to see him have this game as far as the wide receiver group goes.
Okay, so let me throw
bringing that up.
I was going to say, Kelsey, let me throw this one out there to you guys.
Yeah.
Do you have more confidence in the players stepping up or in Kellen Moore's game plan heading into this one?
Oh, I have faith in both, only because the preparation is something that I've looked at through the season. In the beginning of the season, Kellen Moore typically he just seems more prepared. It seems like the script makes more sense. It seems like when they come out, they're scoring on first drives and stuff like that. And if you look at the Bucs game, I said this yesterday, I feel like they were very prepared on both sides of the ball. I think that when you're playing someone like, Mike McCarthy mentioned the other day, talking about, you're not going to go try to play a chess match with Tom Brady. This is a very assignment-based game. It is this is your guy. You play your assignment. This is how we went. Trust your eyes. Our defense is going to have to really trust their eyes. I will say that I feel like they have been scouting this team for a while. You can listen to it in some of the conversation. They're excited for this game. So I feel like I do have confidence in what Kellen Moore can do with the circumstances now, because I do, like we talked about, I think that they did see the weaknesses on the Bucs last year, and they went at them. And it may not have looked how we expected it to, with Dak flinging the ball out there like that as much, but I hope that they have a more balanced attack. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm right there with you. It's kind of, you can't have one without the other. So if your players don't have faith in their play calling, you're not going to see anything happen, right? But same with that. If your coaches don't have faith in their players, then that's a whole other position. But this goes back to what we talked about yesterday with the environment and the culture that's created now within the coaching staff. And of course, we were talking about Mike McCarthy yesterday, but I really think Kellen Moore has stepped into his role, and I'm hoping this season is going to look more comfortable, more confident, knowing what he's doing. And I think he has become more of a leader as opposed to a friend, if you will, with a lack of a better way to say it for him. But I think the guys have stepped up to see him as more of a leader than just, hey man, what's up? I think, and I will contribute that to the Mike McCarthy culture that, we just talked about yesterday. But I think really when you have to have faith is when it comes down to the players. I mean, they're the ones that have to utilize what they're being told, right?
I'm personally on the side of, I think that a lot of this is going to be on Kellen Moore, because quite frankly, I feel like a lot of these guys are chomping at the bit for an opportunity.
Yes.
Dalton Schultz is a guy who I think is a perfect example of this, where he answered the call when it was given to him. And that's another person that I think is going to be, listen, he's a receiver. He's a Kyle Pitts.
Year.
I mean, Kyle Pitts is not the perfect equivalent, but it seems like tight ends are kind of moving away from that blocking tight end that we were talking about with the Jason Witten, when he kind of had to turn into a little bit of that more than a receiving tight end.
Yep.
Dalton Schultz is pretty focused on being a receiver. I mean, he had over 800 yards last season alone. So I think for me, I look at Kellen and I'm like, okay, this is your opportunity to have this be a truly balanced attack where you're giving a lot of people a chance to make an impact. I also, I feel like Kellen, I've heard this before, where he likes to draw some inspiration from, different games, like college games too. Hopefully he's not going to be watching the University of Texas and Alabama game. Jane, I'm a little sad about what we're going to probably experience, but I guess my point is that it feels like this team is locked and loaded to be able to truly push themselves. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for him to get some guys in the mix to maybe have them able to make an impact because they haven't had the chance before.
My thing with Kellen Moore is
she about to say it.
Let us have it, Jane.
Every season, I feel like the last 2 seasons at least, we want to run the ball. We want to run the ball. I don't really see them run the ball. And I get that you couldn't establish the run against Tampa, but the only team when I went and pulled the research notes that loaded the box the way that they did was the Raiders. So just show me. Now, we did have an interesting conversation with Mike McCarthy in the offseason because one of the questions I asked very pointedly is, why aren't you more involved in the playbook? Like, why not just grab the playbook, especially quarterback draw, 14 seconds to go into the game against San Francisco? Why not do more? And he said that what he had learned was the importance of delegating, but he also conceded that there was so much different terminology and schools of thought as it related to the offense, and he felt like they were more on the same page this year. Mm-hmm. So I am going to be curious to see that marriage of the two ideologies and how comfortable these two are with each other now, how that translates into what they're doing offensively this year. Mm-hmm. And we do know with Mike McCarthy, and correct me if I'm wrong, he really does love employing, more of the 12 personnel, the 2 tight end sets.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to see more of that. And obviously they were limited because they didn't have Blake Jarwin last year. Of course, they had Dalton Schultz. They were limited last year. Let's see if Jake Ferguson can step up in that role for them.
Yeah. No, you're right. Injuries played a lot into, the change because you saw early in that Bucs game, Cowboys came out in 11, 12 personnel. They were mixing up a lot of stuff, but then we did have some injuries. Well, the Cowboys did have some injuries to their tight end room, and Sean McKeon, Jeremy Sprinkle went down, and so you really had Dalton Schultz working with basically himself, and I think he really did make the decision like, which one am I gonna do here? I have to be more of a receiver. They need me here, So I do agree that I think the tight end room is gonna. Well, when you're talking about 12 personnel, the tight end room is important there. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk. We'll go to a break, but when we get back, I do want to re-emphasize some of the struggles that at least the Bucs are dealing with as we talk about the other team, because I do feel like sometimes we can get so myopic about the Cowboys that we're not focusing enough on some of the stuff that they're dealing with as it relates to their offensive line. Their offensive line is actually a lot more banged up than what the Cowboys are dealing with right now. So we'll sort of deep dive into that if you haven't had a chance to look at the other team, because look, admittedly, I'm so busy up here at the Star during the week focused on the Cowboys. I don't get to do it as much, so that's why I love this show. But you know what I also love? Jigsaw dating app. It's the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and we are presented by them. That is how Girls Talk, Boys Talk gets on the air, so we appreciate that. And on the other side of the break, we'll talk about another tale of tape.
Sweet. Did you get to work on time?
Yeah, but I just realized it's Sunday.
Little Sweet says head on home. Dr. Pepper's on its way. So sweet, unique. Baby, there's nothing better. I bet you've probably done something that deserves a Dr. Pepper. Did you invest your nest egg in an NFT?
Yeah, and I don't even know what that is. It's a non-fungible token.
Everyone's on something that deserves a Dr. Pepper.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. It's not complicated.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Brace yourself for an existential question. Has your butt been having enough fun lately? Have you been treating it well? Has it been going places? If not, then it's about time you start using SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the best way to get your butt tickets to live events. Just ask the thousands of other butts who have rated it the #1 ticketing app. So what are you waiting for? Download the app now or visit SeatGeek.com to get tickets to sports, concerts, and live events and make your butt happy. SeatGeek. Get your seat in a seat.
What do you call a group of grown men and women with their faces painted silver and blue who get together every week to share a 3-hour-long ritual of jumping, sinking, and toasting Miller Lite in 10-gallon hats while yelling, "How about them Cowboys?" You call it Miller Time in Dallas. Here's to the Cowboys. Here's to the original light beer. It's Miller time. Celebrate responsibly. 2021 Miller Brewing Company, Fort Worth, Texas.
Welcome back to Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. Listen, the Dallas Cowboys would prefer to have Tyron Smith over there at left tackle. They, of course, will have Tyler Smith, like what I did there with that segue.
Love
girls.
that. That was beautiful.
But as much as we've talked about the woes of the Cowboys' offensive line, really, when you start looking at the Bucs, let's talk about what they're dealing with. Tom Brady's going to be without his right guard, his left guard, and his center from 2021. They will have new starters at each interior offensive line position. Center Ryan Jensen may be out for the season thanks to his knee injury. Right guard Alex Kappa signed with the Bengals. He had 46 starts for Tampa Bay. Their left guard, Ali Marpet, obviously had the 7th highest PFF grade since 2020. And when you look at your 2022 starters, guys like Robert Hainsey at center, Luke Godeke at left guard, and you've got Shaq Mason at right guard. This is tough. I mean, when you talk about that Bucs offensive line, they allowed 23 sacks and 57 QB hits in 2021. That was the fewest in the NFL. So Tom Brady was real used to being upright. And as we discussed on a podcast earlier on Media Mash, I have a real concern for Tom Brady in the sense that continuity matters. Dak Prescott is probably not the best example in terms of a comp last year because we didn't see him much in training camp because of his shoulder injury, right? But he played lights out in week 1. And I think a lot of us were not only impressed but also surprised given the nature of his injury coming back. But for me, when you talk about Tom Brady, not only does he not have a ton of continuity with some of his receivers, now this offensive line, but I do think a lot of the stuff that's going on off the field, I mean, even we were sitting in here looking at the TV, man, he looks skinnier. He doesn't look like himself. Talking to reporters in that market, they've told me he's off. Is he going to be the type of guy that's going to use that and as fuel in this game, or is whatever that's going on off the field truly going to be a distraction? And so just your thoughts as you look at this game and sort of what he's dealing with, the deficits on the offensive line, Aisha.
I think what the Cowboys do well defensively plays well into what I guess Tom Brady's weaknesses are right now. I'm on the fence about whether he is going to be affected by what's going on with him. I think he's a human being and it's possible, but we've seen him just out of nowhere snap into it. And I do think there are some of the greats who can just turn it on. And I do think that Tom is one of those guys. But what he can't dictate is the difference in his offensive line that you just talked about. Yeah. It's so interesting when you start talking about quarterback. There's so many factors that play into a successful quarterback, and offensive line is one of them. And with his timing being off, we know he's going to get the ball out quick and stuff. He's going to move within the pocket. He's going to shuffle and stuff. But he may be shuffling into a blitz, into a stunt, because I wholeheartedly expect, like, that's the chess match I'm looking at, is Dan Quinn against the Bucs offensive coordinator and how he figures out where to put guys, when to deploy guys. I am a little nervous about, you see this with Aaron Rodgers very often, the substitutions, the timing. We haven't really touched on like the penalties, associated, but I do think as he gets older and he gets into his game, I think a lot of the mental is what could hurt the Cowboys more than like a lot of his physical play and him moving outside the pocket and stuff. I do think that some of this stuff is going to affect him, but more than anything, I think the middle of this defensive line is what's going to affect what he decides to do with that ball and how quickly he gets it out.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday, too, is when you put pressure on Tom Brady, that's when he starts to get flustered. That's when you start to see the mistakes come out, right? And something we touched base on yesterday, too, is you have a beginning of the season Tom Brady, and then you have December playoff form Tom Brady. They're both amazing. They're both great, right? Tom Brady is a great quarterback at the end of the day, but they're two different players. And, I think Tom Brady, if we were talking about most any other quarterback, I would say, yeah, that's going to impact them. And
right.
yeah, we have this game in the bag. But here's the thing. Tom Brady's been doing this for almost the amount of time I've been alive, if I'm being honest.
Tater tots.
So, I think if anybody can pull off a win in his circumstances, it's Tom Brady, which is why, I even saw on Twitter there was a lot of talk of, why would you let Tom Brady leave? Why would you let your quarterback leave during training camp and this and that? Because he knows what he's doing. He's not just a new player.
No, there's real ish going on.
No,
that's what's going on.
There is real stuff
and
going on.
I'm not discrediting that, but what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, he is the professional that he is, and he's going to come out, and he's not just going, even if it's a bad game for him, he's still going to make things happen. So the defense needs to be extra physical. We already know they need to get in, they need to pressure him, they need to fluster him as much as possible. But at the same time, like Jane, you mentioned, as being on this side of things, you don't really look at the other struggles, right, that the other teams are going through. And I think having a younger O-line, for the Bucs is going to really give our defense the advantage in this game. And I mean, I guess you can really say that for the Cowboys and the Bucs defense. But the difference is the Bucs defense, right? They don't have Micah Parsons. They don't have Trayvon Diggs. You don't have the key players that we have that can make these things happen. So, I really think if anything, Tom Brady is going to Tom Brady, and you cannot discount that. Especially being a Cowboys fan.
Do you think
Kelsey,
the young players are scared? Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, Kelsey, I just gotta tell you, I think something's off with him, and I think it's off with him in the sense that, yeah, I think you can compartmentalize some things. I mean, I think we've all gone through stuff that's affected our day-to-day work. But when it's the heavy stuff, and if it is in fact the stuff that, as it relates to your family and your future, that's a big deal. And I think that offense goes as Tom goes. And I've covered so many games of the Bucs, the Saints, the Falcons. I've covered a lot of the NFC South division, and it's interesting because I've covered a couple of games where he has come out real slow, a little discombobulated, then you give him the half and he sort of readjusts. So I think he always kind of starts the season off. And I mean, even if you want to look at the Cowboys playing him in week 1, I mean, I was not expecting that performance in the Cowboys. And if anyone was telling you they're expecting that performance in the Cowboys after they won the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, they're lying to you. He can be beat. And I just wonder, as Micah Parsons was talking about kryptonite, I just wonder if his family is kryptonite right now. And I do wonder how much all of these things are going to play into week 1. And again, he is Tom Brady. I don't want to count him out, but we haven't exactly seen this from Tom Brady affecting him, and how vulnerable he was in that press conference. Did you guys notice that even his sweatshirt said forever?
Yeah.
Am I like picking up on something too weird there, Kels?
No, I really do. Like, Jane, I'm right there with you. Like, I used to like tracking. Like, it's genuinely, I think there's something up. And I think there's something to that. I don't know what kind of person Tom is, and if he takes those things, kind of can compartmentalize them. Obviously, if you're seeing it reflected in his, actual like weight and things of that nature, I'd probably tend to get a little concerned. He could also be the kind of person who takes that and just throws himself into the game if he's just kind of distracting himself from what's actually going on outside off the field. I don't know the answer to that. I do know, though, I've never seen this from Tom Brady.
This feels different.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. And so, I don't think we can apply the same rules that we have in the past when we're talking about him when it just doesn't seem to be the same environment. So I definitely think it's going to be a factor.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, well, we've got 3 minutes left in the show. I always love that we get in these spirited discussions with you guys, and it goes by so quick.
Time goes by so quick.
I know we want to not only get interesting tweets with interesting nuggets in, but we also want to get some of the tweets in as it relates to you, the fans, that we see on Twitter, or even if you're hollering at us. And Aisha, you found a few.
I did.
Let me pull the curtain back. The phone dropped. So 1 second.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, so
Twitter's fun. Twitter
absolutely
can be a fun place.
So this tweet is from @6Blackhawks. Feed Zeke. So it's just 10 more days until the Cowboys determine how I feel every day. I don't
Facts.
I feel that in my soul, and I hated reading that. But
Totally
that is
dictate
the
your
truest
week.
thing I've heard in a minute.
Yep. Y'all, my dad once, I got him a Dallas Cowboys jersey, and it was Miles Austin back in the day, right? And the Cowboys had one of those frustrating seasons. And this man, I swear to God, got the receipt and took it back. He returned it. I was just like, God, you're such a Fairweather fan, Dad. You're so emotional.
If you're not following Jane Slater on Instagram, you're missing out because, like, the Danger Slater files are some of my favorite posts of all
I've been watching. I've been watching.
Dad's an icon. Okay, real quick, we have a hard out today. One pass interference nugget from you.
All right, your pass interference for the day is Dak Prescott has completed 94 of 119 passes in 3 career games against Tampa Bay. That is the highest of any quarterback against any single opponent in NFL history. So
but still 2-0 against Tom Brady.
We're not,
0-2 against Tom
I was
Brady.
trying to make this positive. I was trying to hype everyone up. We're almost
What
to our
happens
game
once
day.
happens 3 times. All right, guys, thank you so much for another awesome show. Tomorrow we will really preview our players to watch. Thank you for tuning in to Girls Talk, Boys Talk. We will see you on Friday.
See ya.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys?